You saw it yesterday afternoon, the robin on the lawn, standing completely still, beak open, not singing, not eating, just standing there, mouth wide, throat fluttering. You looked at her for a second, thought it was strange, and went back inside. The temperature on your porch thermometer read 94 degrees. Most people see this and think the bird is resting, or yawning, or doing some small bird thing they don't fully understand. The reality is that what you were watching was a bird in survival mode. Birds cannot sweat. They cannot drink the way mammals drink. And when the temperature in your yard climbs past 90 degrees, something happens to the birds in it that most people who feed them have never been told about. Researchers at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the U.S. Geological Survey have documented that small songbirds can lose up to 5% of their body weight in water in a single hot afternoon, and that backyard bird mortality during heat waves has been climbing in recent years for reasons most homeowners are accidentally making worse. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what your birds are doing in the heat, what most people are getting dangerously wrong about how to help them, and the one thing in nearly every yard that has become, under summer sun, actively dangerous to the birds it was meant to support. Welcome back to Hidden Yard. Subscribe before you leave, because what you're about to learn happens in your yard every hot afternoon. And the changes you can make once you understand it are simple, fast, and in some cases, the difference between a bird that survives the summer and a bird that doesn't. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover is the single most common piece of summer bird care advice given by well-meaning people online. And the data on what it actually does to the birds in your yard is something almost no one talks about. Let's start with what's actually happening inside the bird on your lawn. Number 1, why the beak is open and what it means. The robin with her mouth open is doing something called Gular fluttering. It is one of the only cooling mechanisms small songbirds have, and it works almost nothing like sweating. A bird's normal body temperature runs between 104 and 109 degrees. That is significantly hotter than a human's, and it is what the bird's metabolism needs. When the air temperature climbs into the 90s, the gap between the bird's body and its environment narrows. Heat that would normally radiate off the bird stops radiating, and the bird begins to overheat from the inside. With no sweat glands and no way to release heat through the skin, the bird is left with two options. The first is panting, opening the beak and breathing rapidly to release heat through the lungs. The second is gular fluttering, rapidly vibrating the loose skin and muscles of the throat to evaporate water from that wet surface. Both are expensive. Both burn through the bird's limited water reserves. A robin gular fluttering on your lawn for 15 minutes is losing water she cannot easily replace. And when the air is dry and hot, evaporation works faster, which sounds good for cooling but is actually devastating for hydration. The bird with her beak open is not resting. She is using one of the only tools she has, and the clock is running. Number 2, why your birds disappear from the feeder at noon. Your yard is full of birds at 7 in the morning. By 2 in the afternoon, on a hot day, it is empty. The feeder is full. Nothing is coming. Most people assume the birds have gone somewhere else to eat. They haven't. They've gone somewhere else to survive. When the temperature climbs past about 85 degrees, the energy math of feeding changes completely. Coming to a feeder in open sun requires the bird to fly, perch on hot surfaces, and expose itself to direct sunlight while burning calories that generate metabolic heat. For a small songbird already operating near its thermal limit, the cost of feeding in the open at noon can outweigh the benefit. So the birds retreat. They move to dense shade, the deep interior of evergreens, the shaded side of buildings, the canopy of mature deciduous trees. They reduce their activity. They sit still. They wait. This is called heat-induced inactivity, and it is the single biggest behavioral change in your yard during summer afternoons. Your birds are not gone. They are roughly 20 feet from where they were this morning, hidden in shade, conserving every calorie they can. The hours they will return are predictable: early morning before the heat builds, and the last hour before sunset, when the temperature has begun to drop. If you want to see your birds in summer, those are your 2 windows. Number 3, the temperature your metal feeder reaches in direct sun. Now we get to the first thing in your yard that has, without your knowing it, become dangerous. A metal feeder perch in direct summer sun reaches surface temperatures that wildlife rehabilitators have measured at up to 140 degrees. That is not the air temperature. That is the metal itself, on a 95-degree day. A bird landing on that perch is touching a surface hot enough to cause tissue damage. Bird feet do not have thick insulating pads. The thin skin and tendon structure of a songbird's foot transmits heat almost immediately. The bird that lands and flies right back off is not being skittish. She is being burned. This is one of the reasons your feeder may go quiet on hot afternoons, even after the birds have rested. The feeder itself has become unsafe. The fix is simple. Move feeders into morning shade for the summer months. Wooden feeders absorb less radiant heat than metal. Light-colored surfaces reflect more sun than dark ones. These small adjustments change the surface temperature of the feeder by 20 to 30 degrees, and that difference is everything. Number 4. The bird bath that has become a hazard. This is the part where the most well-intentioned thing in your yard turns against you. A bird bath in full summer sun with shallow water can reach internal water temperatures of 100 to 110 degrees by mid-afternoon. Water at that temperature does not help a bird cool down. It accelerates dehydration. A bird that drinks from or bathes in water that hot is being injured by the very thing meant to support her. There is also a second risk that almost no one talks about. Stagnant water in a sun-heated bath becomes a breeding ground for bacteria and parasites within hours, not days. Birds that drink from heat-degraded water sources can contract diseases, most notably trichomoniasis, which has been documented spreading through backyard bird populations through contaminated water, with consequences that can devastate a local bird community. The corrections are not complicated. Place bird baths in morning shade. Change the water at least once a day in summer and twice on the hottest days. Keep the water shallow, under 2 inches. The single most effective upgrade is moving water, a small dripper or wiggler that keeps the surface in motion. Moving water resists bacterial growth, stays slightly cooler through evaporative effect, and is far more visible to birds flying overhead than a still bath. Number 5. The hours that matter most. If you only do one thing differently this summer, do this. Pay attention to the hours. The window between roughly 11 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon is when the heat in your yard reaches its highest sustained levels. This is the window in which birds are most thermally stressed, when feeders and baths are at their hottest, and when intervention has the most impact. Researchers studying heat stress in backyard birds have found that the simple act of providing cool, clean, accessible water during these hours measurably reduces signs of physiological stress in local bird populations. Birds that have to fly long distances to find water in the heat lose more body weight and are more vulnerable to predation because of impaired flight performance. Fill the bath in the morning, refresh it at noon, refresh it again at 3. On the worst days, that is the entire program. Number 6. The signs of a bird in heat distress. Most heat stress in backyard birds is invisible to people who don't know what they're looking for. Here are the signs. Open beak with rapid throat movement, especially when the bird is otherwise still. This is Gular fluttering, and it is a sign of active thermal load. Wings held slightly away from the body, drooping or out from the sides. This is a heat-dumping posture. The bird is trying to expose the thinner skin under the wings to release heat. Bathing behavior that goes on longer than usual, or repeated trips to water within minutes. Normal summer drinking is short. Sustained or repeated water seeking is a stress signal. Birds resting on shaded ground in places they don't normally rest, under shrubs, against the foundation of a building, in flower beds. A bird sitting motionless on the ground in the shade is often a bird that has exhausted its margin for active thermoregulation. If you see these signs and the bird does not appear injured, the best thing you can do is leave her alone and make sure clean, shaded water is available within easy flight distance. Most heat-stressed birds recover with rest and rehydration. The intervention is not catching the bird. It is keeping the resources she needs within reach. Number 7. The most common piece of summer bird advice, and what's actually wrong with it. I've saved this for the end because it is the one most worth getting right. Across gardening magazines, social media posts, and advice columns, there is a piece of summer bird care wisdom that gets repeated constantly. Put out ice water for the birds. The intention is good. The reasoning sounds correct. Cold water cools the bird, helps her hydrate. The problem is what cold water actually does to a small bird. Songbirds drink in tiny amounts, and they cannot regulate the temperature of incoming fluids the way mammals can. Cold water hitting the internal tissues of a small bird at high environmental temperature creates a sudden thermal differential the bird's physiology is not built to handle. In documented cases, very cold water has been associated with cold shock responses, particularly in smaller species like finches and hummingbirds, where the relative volume of even a few sips is significant compared to the bird's body mass. What birds actually need is cool, not cold. Water at roughly the temperature it would be coming out of a shaded outdoor tap, 60 to 70 degrees, is ideal. Refreshed often, kept clean, moving if possible. This is not as dramatic as ice water, and it does not feel as decisive when you're trying to help. But it is what the birds in your yard actually need. The next time you see a robin on your lawn standing with her beak open on a hot afternoon, you will know what you are looking at. You will know what she has access to in your yard, what she does not, and what changes between this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon if you decide to make them. Tell me in the comments, what does your yard look like on the hot